here, that does not exist. Basically, you can't take the square root of a negative number, at least not in this class. You can't. Anyhow, we don't deal with that. We don't deal with the square root of negative numbers. So this thing right here, b squared minus 4ac, is the discriminant, and it lets me know how many answers a quadratic equation might have. If I just use b squared minus 4ac, again, if it comes out negative, then there's no solution, because if b squared minus 4ac is negative, then I have the square root of a negative number, and I can't have that. So if this right here comes out negative, no solution. If it comes out positive, the square root of a positive number really has two answers. So, or it doesn't have two answers, but in the equation it's plus or minus. So if I have a positive number in here, and then I have to add it and then subtract it, that's what this plus or minus means. It'll give me two answers. So again, if b squared minus 4ac is a positive number, then I know that the quadratic equation has two answers. And then the third option, if b squared minus 4ac is 0, it doesn't matter whether I add or subtract 0, it's not going to change anything. So if it's 0, then I have one answer, and everything I just said is in here. If it's greater than 0, there's two answers. If it equals 0, there's one answer, and if it's negative, well, it says, see, there's two imaginary roots, so that's what I was saying. We don't really deal with imaginary numbers in this class, so that'll just kind of be like no solution for us. Anyhow, so you may be able to solve this by factoring, but we'll just do what it says. We'll solve using the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is, for sure, you want to know what a, b, and c are. Even if you don't write it down, you really want to, or you need to know what they are. A is 2, b is 9, c is negative 5. Your quadratic formula says x equals negative b, so negative 9 plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac, so 9 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 5, all over 2a, so all over 2 times 2. And you might want to, not write too big here because you'll run out of space, but I like to go ahead and evaluate, aka calculate everything under the radical as my first step. So negative 9 plus or minus 81, I guess I'll show one extra step here. 81 minus 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times negative 5 is negative 40. So really, minus a negative 40 becomes plus 40. 2 times 2 is 4. So x equals negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 121 over 4. The square root of 121 happens to be a perfect square, right? So negative 9 plus or minus 11, the square root of 121 is 11, over 4. And then you do keep simplifying this, you guys. I'm going to rewrite it over here. X equals negative 9 plus 11 over 4. Oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, this little symbol here that maybe looks like something you're not familiar with, I'm not sure, it just means add and get an answer, and then subtract and get an answer. So literally plus or minus. So do the plus, see what you get, and then do the minus, negative 9 minus 11 over 4, that is, and see what you get. So again, that symbol plus or minus is literally just saying see what you get when you add and see what you get when you subtract. Negative 9 plus 11, that's 2. 2/4 is a half. That's one of my answers. And then negative 9 minus 11, that's negative 20. Divided by 4, that's negative 5. So there's my two answers on that one. And you might be able to do this by factoring, but it would give you the same two answers. So moving right along here, the next problem, I'm going to have to subtract 4x and subtract 1 in order to make it equal to 0. So again, if I subtract 4x and I subtract 1, that would allow me to, make it equal to 0. And you might be able to solve this by factoring, but I'm going to go ahead and use the quadratic formula again. I'm supposed to just be practicing quadratic formula anyways, and it does give me the same answers either way, whether I solve by factoring, quadratic formula, or some other way. the answer should be the same. So x equals, remember, negative b. B is negative 4, so negative b would make positive 4. Think about that. B is negative 4, so negative b is positive 4. Plus or minus square root of b squared, that's negative 4 squared. So you're squaring the whole negative 4 on that one. Minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 1. All over 2a, so all over 2 times 2. So 4 plus or minus, remember in the radical you can just simplify. 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times negative 1 is minus 8, but it's minus 8, so that's plus 8. And then you might just do all that before you do the next step. Negative 4 times negative 4 is 16, so again that's 16 and plus 8. 16 plus 8 is 24, and 2 times 2 is 4, and if you remember from the simplifying radicals that we did, you could simplify this without using a calculator. 4 plus or minus the square root of, I'm going to call 24, I'm going to call it 4 times 6, because 4 times 6 is 24, but I can take the square root of 4. So again, this is all simplifying, no calculator. If I do that, 4 plus or minus, again, take the square root of 4 out, that's 2, the 6 stays in. 4 on the denominator, bring that along, but notice now, look at all your terms. All your terms are even numbers. You can divide by 2. You can keep simplifying this. You can divide by 2, so you end up with 2, 1, and 2. And so finally, without using a calculator, I can go with this answer. 2 plus or minus the square root of 6. Again, 1 times the square root of 6 is just the square root of 6. And that's all over 2. And so again, that's fine. Like if I don't have a calculator, I can leave it like that. However, with a calculator, I can keep going. I can take the square root of 6. So let me just find that. Square root of 6. Square root of 6 is about 2. I'm just going to use 2.45 for that. So square root of 6 is about 2.45. So I'm going to switch back up here, guys. 2 plus 2.45 over 2. Remember, plus or minus. And then 2 minus 2.45 over 2. I think I'm going to get into this left column. I've taken a little too much space here. 2 minus 2.45 over 2. So that can be calculated. Let's see what that is. Just use a calculator. 2 plus 2.45, that's 4.45. Divide by 2, and we got 2.225. This next one, 2 minus 2.45, and then divide by 2. And on this one, I got negative 0.225. So, again, if you don't have a calculator, this answer's reasonable enough. Whoops. If you don't have a calculator, that answer's reasonable enough. If you do have a calculator, you can take the square root of 6 with that and then kind of keep going. So, let's try quadratic formula one more time. Subtract 6x and add 1. So 2x squared minus 6x plus 1 equals 0. A, B, C, right? A is 2, B is negative 6, C is 1. And so x equals, right? X equals negative b. So 6 plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac 4ac all over 2a. So all over 2 times 2. And I'm a little low on space here, so I'm going to try and do a little bit of maybe extra steps here. This is 36 minus, this is just 8. 36 minus 8 is 28. And 2 times 2 is 4. And let me just on the side here advise you, if you do simplify the square root of 28, it's 4 times 7 is 28, and then if you take the square root of 4, it's 2 radical 7. So if you simplify the square root of 28, you get 2 radical 7. And again, that's something you can do by hand without a calculator, if it all makes sense, of course. So when you do that, when you simplify the square root of 28, you see the same thing as in the last problem, where 6, 2, and 4 are all even numbers. I can divide all of them by 2, and leave me with a simplified answer. 3 plus or minus the square root of 7 2. And that's all good. That's fine. If you don't have a calculator, stopping there makes sense. However, let's see what we get with a calculator also. So the square root of 7 is what I need from the calculator. 2.645. Depending on what I'm doing, I might use a lot more decimal places, but I'm going to round this to 2.6. I just want to kind of emphasize the process here. The answer doesn't necessarily have to be super exact. So 3 plus, let me get back to that number, 3 plus 2.6 divided by 2. I'm going to finish this problem off up here. 3 plus 2.6 divided by 2, and then 3 minus 2.6 divided by 2. Don't let me lose you. Remember, the plus or minus literally means add that number and then see what you get after you simplify and then subtract that number. So 3 plus 2.6 is 5.6, divide by 2, and that's 2.8. Remember, I did round the square root of 7, so these numbers are approximate, not perfectly exact. And then 3 minus 2.6, was that 0.4? Let's make sure. 0.4, and if I divide by 2, I get 0.2. So there's that. Again, no calculator, I'll stop here. If I have a calculator, I can do that. Also, if you do struggle with simplifying radicals, I suppose you could just take the square root of 28. But either way, you're definitely going to have to figure out how to get to some version of the final answer. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and add 2x on this one to make this equal to 0. Also, normally what you have in a trinomial square is you want to have the squared term, right, the quadratic term first. When I add the 2x over, I kind of want that to be my second term. I want my linear term second, my x term second, and then minus 1. Right, bring down the minus 1. And I think you can factor this. I mean, you can use quadratic formula, but I think you can also factor it. So I think I'm going to go back to factoring on this one. So a, b, c, 8 to negative 1. A times c is negative 8. Numbers I can multiply to get negative 8 that add up to 2. I don't know, let's see. Negative 1 times 8, negative 2 times 4. And maybe I do need to use, or no, we're good here. Negative 2 and 4. Negative 2 and 4, right, that is, if I add those, I get the 2 that I'm looking for, so I'm going to go ahead, and then you can decide if, once you're solving these, once you're on the solving part, you can decide if you want to use quadratic formula or factoring. Replace the 2x with minus 2x plus 4x, right, it's minus 2x plus 4x is still 2x, bring down the minus 1. As I was saying, you could use for solving either quadratic formula or factoring, but either way, just kind of wanted to touch on maybe both a little bit real quick. This one might have been better to use this quadratic formula for you, but either way, I already started factoring it, so I'm just going to carry on with that. Group the first 2 terms and the second 2 terms, factor out the common factor from 8x and 2x. You can factor out a 2x. And remember, factoring is dividing, so 8 divided by 2 is 4, so 4x. 2x divided by 2x is 1. And you actually don't have to factor anything out of this one, because it already has the 4x minus 1. However, when you factor out the 4x minus 1, there is a 1 left over here. So since there's nothing but 4x minus 1, remember, factoring is like dividing, so when you factor out 4x minus 1 from here, you're dividing by 4x minus 1, so you have to have that 1 left over. So factor out the 4x minus 1, and then you have 2x plus 1 left over. And if you think quadratic formula would have been better here, that's fine. You definitely could use quadratic formula. And anyhow, I'm ready to set my 2 factors equal to 0. 4x minus 1 equals 0. 2x plus 1 equals 0, and then here, right, add 1, 4x equals 1, and then divide by 4, so x equals 1/4. It's one of my answers. And on this one, subtract 1, divide by 2, and x equals negative 1/2 is my other answer. So 0.25 and negative 0.5 if you